My name's Sarah Mantell. I'm the bariatric coordinator here at Community Health Network.
And Marjorie Klein, licensed clinical social worker, basically counselor here at the Community Health Bariatric and Weight Loss Center.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Marjorie, for coming in today. We are working so hard to support all of you during this time when we aren't seeing people in the clinic. So I know it's a tough time for everyone. We want to make sure that you are getting the support you need. So we're trying to give you as much information as we can. I know you've seen a lot of nutritional videos, different recipes and tips, but I want to make sure that we bring in the emotional piece of things as well. And this is a tough time. So I've invited Marjorie to come here to talk to us a little bit about emotional eating today.
And I'm just doing a presentation off of a handout that I found that it's just a really nice nuts and bolts kind of handout, emotional eating. I do this in class a lot. So I'm just gonna share it with you. And one of the things I really like about when I'm looking at this handout, she really does diversify the idea of emotional eating. I think our first thought of emotional eating is, I eat when I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm anxious, I'm bored, which that is true, but it is a lot more diverse than that, otherwise it would be easier not to do. So what I like is she says, okay, an emotional eater, well, do you think that you eat more when you feel stressed? Do you think you eat when you're not hungry or even when you're full? Then do you think you eat to feel better, to calm yourself when you're mad, sad, bored, or anxious? And don't underestimate the power of boredom as a trigger. Especially now. Do you celebrate or reward with food, which I think that is something most of us do, and I really think that for me, maybe I'm projecting, is one of the harder ones to not do. Do you eat regularly until you feel stuffed? Does food make you feel safe or like it's a friend? Or do you feel powerless or out of control around food? So those are some things that can diversify that definition of an emotional eater. And the idea of powerlessness, that one really does intrigue me as a characteristic of emotional eating, because I do have an addiction background as well. And when you talk about addictive patterns, the thing that comes into play is often talking about feeling powerless. And I do think that this eating pattern falls very similarly and follows very similarly some of the other addictive patterns that I've had experience with in the past. And one of the things that's really nice and wonderful for me working at this center is that usually people are coming into the clinic and they're feeling pretty powerless about their journey. Somewhere along the way, there's a switch and they do start feeling more empowered, which is what I really enjoy, being able to be a part of that and see some of that. So those are some of the things that define emotional eating. The difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger, there is a difference. And people talk about, a lot of times that's the first step for them getting a handle on this emotional eating, is when they start asking themselves, am I physically hungry? Am I emotionally hungry? What's the difference? So if you're emotionally hungry, it comes on very suddenly. It hits you quickly. Physical hunger is not that way. It comes on gradually, and think about it. Your stomach is full. It empties gradually, so you're going to feel hunger gradually. Emotional hunger is craving those specific comfort foods. When you're physically hungry and you eat something you might not normally like, it tastes pretty good because your body is hungry. Emotional hunger leads that mindless eating. Before you know it, you've eaten way more than you intended. Physical hunger, yeah, you're pretty much aware of what it is you're putting in your body. Emotional hunger isn't satisfied once you're full. It wants more and more and more. I did have a patient early on, I learned that he really talked to me about the first line of defense that he did was really teaching his brain to recognize what's the difference between being satisfied versus full, because in his mind, you stop when you're full. And so he spent a lot of time working on training his brain to recognize satisfied. I do think that is part of it. Emotional hunger isn't located in the stomach. You're not growling in your stomach. It's more of a thought you can't get out of your head. And I tease my mom. I tell this story a lot, that when I was about 4, because I know what house I was in, she had a saying that she would say, my mouth has a taste for. I go, Mom, that wasn't your mouth. That was your head. She was stuck at home. She didn't drive. She didn't work. She had 2 kids 15 months apart. We were making her crazy. And then emotional hunger leads to those feelings of regret, guilt, and shame. When you fuel your body for physical reasons, you do not feel those things typically. So I think that's a really good way, and some people have put those ideas on their refrigerator or their pantry where they go to get something to eat so they can stop and ask themselves, which is it? Of course, if it's physical hunger, you're going to fuel your body. Emotional hunger, you still have choice. You can drink fluid instead. Maybe people have found that they are really more thirsty than they are hungry. You can walk away, of course. You can make a different choice than what you're craving. But even if you're looking in the refrigerator and you have a craving and you realize it's emotional hunger, what I'm noticing that people are doing now, and I still think this is a win because you go back to that powerlessness, they're doing portion control, meaning they just take a few bites. For my wheelhouse, I still think that's a win. I don't know how the dietitians would feel about that, but because at that point, who's in charge of the food? Are you in charge of the food, or is the food calling you from the refrigerator and calling you? So I still think that what I'm finding is people, when they recognize it's emotional hunger, they take a couple bites, that's still a win. It's not if it leads you down the road, if it's just like one of those, like a gateway drug and you just start eating more. But some people, I think there are some foods that are safe foods that you can do that with, and there are non-safe foods that you cannot do that with. And it's best not to have your non-safe foods even in the house. Create yourself a safety zone with those foods. We all know what those are. Vanilla ice cream and Tostitos are mine. I cannot have those on the house because I show no self-control of those things. So anyway, now, in terms of what causes emotional eating, of course we know stress. Like, it isn't just environmental stress, but you do secrete a hormone like cortisol that tells you that you're hungry. So that is part of the emotional eating triggers. Then stuffing your emotions, that is my wheelhouse. I do think when people are not identifying their feelings, not expressing feelings, learning what those uncomfortable feelings are, taking risks to share those feelings, it does set you up to either try to do things to cope, or things happen like depression and anxiety, cutting whatever it is that people have done to cope with emotion. And so I do think getting a better balance of emotion is part of the journey. We know it's complicated. It isn't just that. There's heredity, there's health conditions, there's what you're eating and moving, but for my wheelhouse, that emotional piece is part of it. People do eat when they're bored and feeling lonely. That's part of that trigger. Childhood habits is one of my favorite triggers of emotional eating, and we all talk a lot about here in support groups about like the Clean Plate Club, where, you know, young lady, you cannot leave the table until you finish eating the plate of that food. Your dad works really hard for that money. You need to eat that. It's wasteful. What is it? People in third world countries are going to starve. You should be grateful for this. I'm just passing on a little visual. I had this experience when I was here not even 3 months, went camping with my sister, the dogs, the kids, the nephews. After camping, coming home, stop at a roadside diner. We're dirty, we're not going in, so we're eating outside. We get our sandwich. My sister and I look at each other and we say, oh, let's get onion rings. So in my mind, onion rings is that little white carton, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 onion rings in it, and this place gave each of us a basket of onion rings. I'm eating these things, not really aware of it at the time, but I look across and I see a wastebasket across the way. It's one of those ones that has that little white triangle thing on it where you shove your trash in, and it was kind of dirty. At that moment, I realize I'm treating my body like that nasty, dirty wastebasket because I do not want to throw those onion rings away. You are not a wastebasket. You're going to be throwing food away. It's okay. And people in a third world country are not going to benefit from food that you leave on the plate. Stop cleaning up the plates from your children's food before you put them in the dishwasher. Yes, it's okay. And I think social influences trigger some emotional eating. I mean, we all want to bond with our friends and family, going out to dinner and cookouts, holidays. That's normal. However, it does lead us to, makes us susceptible to emotionally eating and getting off plan and doing things we would normally want to. So I would say as much preparation as you can give yourself. Structure. Anytime you're doing something new, structure is good. Prepare yourself before you go to your friend's house. Don't go hungry. Take things that you know you can eat, because you do want to participate in the eating process and share things with them. I think food is a very bonding experience when you think about even, the children with bonding to the breast of the mother. I mean, that's a bonding experience. And when you go out to dinner, one of the best things I've heard is just don't pick up the menu.
True.
Look ahead, don't pick up the menu. Picking up the menu, it's a very exciting thing. It's like, ooh, it's Free Pie Wednesday. I've never had this before. Have you guys tried this? Ooh.
Do you want to split an apple?
I know, let's get that split. It's oh my gosh, like walk down the dark side, because this picking it up and looking, it's a trigger, and they pay a lot of people money to make things look good. So just don't engage, and just watch how exciting it is for people to choose. Coping with emotional eating, of course, we talk about this a lot. It's the food log, and many people start the food log with documenting what they're eating and what they're taking into their body, which is good. We need to do that. However, the part that's missing in a lot of apps, I think apps are great, is that emotional part. How are you feeling during your day? The apps aren't real strong on that, so you almost have to figure out how else to bring that in, so you can start looking at what your triggers are and identifying what those are. I can tell you how to get inside, I can't give it to you. So figuring out what's going on emotionally during the day, I don't want you to document how you're eating, how you're feeling when you're eating. It's how you feel about your day, how that impacts behavior. Eating behavior is just one behavior. It's the one we have to be focusing on here, but there's a lot of insight that you can get by doing it, and it does not have to be long. It can be simple feeling statements. Today I felt sad because, I felt worried because, I felt happy because, whatever the feelings are, like that, you can see what your triggers are. Let's see, I was going to say something, I just slipped my mind. I have to come back to that. Okay, so, oh yeah, so and the other thing I like about the food log and the emotional diary is a lot of people that are working this weight loss journey with us are not very good at making themselves a priority. I do think that is part of the self-care process of making yourself more of a priority. We ask you to do a lot during your journey here, so it does require you getting yourself up off the bottom and doing some things for yourself. So that food log does re-emphasize every day when you're writing in it that you're a priority and this is important and you deserve this. So finding other ways to feed your feelings, other than, I do think that distractions work, so use them. I don't think it's the end all. I do think part of it is looking at identifying your feelings, taking those emotional risks to express those feelings. I think that people that have struggled with chronic obesity, my theory is they've just disconnected from their neck down. They're not looking in mirrors, they're not paying attention to what's going on in their body, and I do think your body will give you really good cues about how you're feeling if you pay attention to it and reconnect. So I do think a lot of times I'm just trying to get people to connect with their bodies. I used to work in schools, and one of the things I learned was teachers would send these little kindergartners to see me that this little Sarah doesn't know how to express her feelings. And I said, little Sarah doesn't know what they are. And so I did a lot of work with those kiddos on where in your body, how do you know when you're feeling sad? How do you know that you're feeling anxious? And it all comes from the body. So I do think that's part of what I'm encouraging people to do. I think that in terms of coping with cravings, that's a very real thing too. I think eating is an impulse control issue, just like a lot of other impulse control issues. When we were talking about working with people that are coping with cravings with alcohol, we talked about pausing, taking 5 minutes. I don't think 5 minutes is enough. I think it's more like 10. But if you do pause, get a break in that craving, it does help. I don't know that it works 100% of the time, but it does help. And then use those distractions during that time. Do your relaxation breathing. I think relaxation breathing helps also during that time to help fight a craving. And I also read, my latest thing is I read somewhere where look at it like a wave. If it's a wave coming at you and you crash right into it, it is going to knock you flat. And I think when you get mad and angry and you're doing, gritting your teeth, you've got this craving, you're going up against that wave and it's going to knock you flat. So I think better get on top. ride the wave, realize it's a craving, it's gonna pass, and when a wave hits the shore, it dissipates. So the idea is ride the wave rather than go right up against it and fight it. And then of course, coping with emotional eating, we talk about good self-care, balance with nutrition, exercise, and sleep, and don't underestimate the power of sleep. What I did not know until I started working here is that when you get good regular sleep, your body does secrete a hormone that tells you that you're satisfied. And when you do not get good regular sleep, it secretes a hormone that tells you that you're hungry. And I think about all the patients that we deal with that do have a comorbid diagnosis of a sleep disorder, and they're not doing their sleep disorder treatment, you're fighting yourself. So I think it's important to do that self-care as well. So anyway, those are short, just brief ideas about emotional eating.
Super helpful.
I just wanted to put that out there. There's a lot of things out there. The favorite book, and people have I've told people about this book, Life is Hard, Food is Easy by Linda Spangle, is my favorite book on emotional eating. So if you get a chance to take a look at that, I've been talking to people a lot about, ever since I've come across it. I didn't know what kind of books I liked when I started here. I do now, and that is one of my favorites.
Everyone, if you've talked to Marjorie once, you know about that book.
I just
so
like it. And I've had
great.
people tell me I should make people read it,
Yes.
which I can't make people read
Good.
it. But
I'm sure people have comments or questions, so comment below. I am happy to send those questions to Marjorie, and we'll get those answered for you guys today. So thank you all much, and
Yes.
we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
bye.
Bye.